There is a specific kind of beauty that only comes from things that are cracked. We see it in art, we hear it in poetry, and for over 30 years, we heard it in the voice of Sinéad O'Connor. But while the world marveled at the cracks in her voice, few of us truly understood the pressure that caused them. Sinéad wasn't just a singer. She was a woman who lived her entire life in the open, carrying a level of trauma that would have crushed most people. Today on Strange Words Music, we aren't looking at the charts or the awards. We are looking at the heavy, often tragic reality of a woman who was too honest for a world that prefers comfortable lies. This is the story of the battles Sinéad O'Connor fought behind the music, a journey defined by a relentless search for peace in a life that rarely gave her any. To understand Sinéad's pain, you have to go back to the beginning. Born in Dublin in 1966, her childhood was not the sanctuary it should have been. She spoke later in life with heartbreaking clarity about a home life defined by extreme fear. She described her mother as a deeply troubled woman who subjected Sinéad to years of physical and emotional hardship. Sinéad once recounted a story of how she spent much of her childhood living in the garden, regardless of the weather, because she was too afraid to be inside. This wasn't just strict parenting. This was a foundational trauma that taught her at a very young age that the world was a dangerous place. It instilled in her a sense of hypervigilance that she would carry into adulthood. By the time she was a teenager, she was sent to a Magdalene laundry, an institution for wayward girls. Imagine a young girl, already reeling from trauma at home, being placed in a cold, rigid system meant to reform her. She said the smell of that place, the smell of fear and bleach, never truly left her. These were the years that forged her defiance, but they also left her with a nervous system that was permanently set to alert. She wasn't being rebellious for the sake of it, she was fighting for her right to exist. When Sinéad became a global superstar in the early 90s, she wasn't happy. She felt like an imposter in the world of pop. She famously shaved her head as a way to reclaim her body from an industry that wanted to turn her into a marketable doll. She refused to be a product, but that refusal came with a massive psychological price. The tragedy of her fame reached a breaking point in 1992. When she tore up the photo of the Pope on live television, she was making a desperate public plea for the world to look at the systemic issues that had hurt her and so many other children in Ireland. She was using her platform to scream for those who couldn't, but the world didn't look at the cause. They looked at the girl. Instead of listening, they pointed and laughed. They called her names. They booed her off the stage at Madison Square Garden just days later. Imagine the psychological toll. You stand up and reveal your deepest wounds to the world, and the world responds by mocking those wounds. This period began a long era of isolation. She was a woman shouting into a storm, and for a long time the only thing she heard back was her own echo. Sinéad spent the middle years of her life in a restless search for peace. She changed her name, she changed her faith, and she changed her home. Every change was a frantic attempt to find a version of herself that didn't hurt. She was open about her struggles with mental health long before it was acceptable for celebrities to do so. She spoke about being misdiagnosed, about the heavy treatments that dimmed her light, and about the crushing weight of loneliness. She was a pioneer in mental health advocacy, but she was treated like a tabloid headline. The tragedy here is that the more she asked for help, the more the media treated her like a spectacle. Every time she posted a vulnerable video or a plea for connection, it was turned into clickbait. She was a person in pain, but she was being treated like a character in a drama. The disconnect between her human need for empathy and the public's appetite for scandal was perhaps the greatest tragedy of her mid-career. She was a real person drowning in a sea of onlookers who were only interested in the waves. For years, the world and many doctors tried to put a label on Sinéad's pain. In the mid-2000s, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She spent nearly a decade on heavy medications that she later described as poisoning her light. She lived with the side effects, the brain fog, and the stigma of a condition that never quite felt like the right fit for what she was experiencing. It wasn't until much later that she received a clearer picture. She was told that she actually suffered from complex PTSD and borderline personality disorder, conditions rooted not in a chemical imbalance from birth, but in the extreme trauma she had endured as a child. She once described herself as a rescue dog, explaining that she was fine until she encountered a situation that smelled like the past. The tragedy of these years was the time lost to the wrong answers. She was fighting a war with her own mind, but she had been given the wrong map. Yet, even in the middle of this confusion, she was a truth teller. She didn't hide her struggles. She brought the reality of mental illness, the messiness, the anger, and the paralyzing shame into the light. She refused to give the sanitized version of recovery that the media wanted. She showed us that healing isn't a straight line. It's a jagged, difficult journey. Despite the headlines that painted her as difficult, there was a side of Sinéad that the cameras rarely caught. She was a mother of 4, and she fought fiercely for her children. In her quiet moments, she was also a woman of immense, secret kindness. She quietly paid for the therapy of strangers. She launched mental health programs in small Irish towns, and she spent years working with the homeless in Dublin under the name Mother Bernadette Mary. There was a desperate need in her to save others from the darkness she knew so well. She once said, "I have no desire for fame. I just had stuff to get off my chest." But the tragedy of her generosity was that she often couldn't find the same grace for herself. She poured her energy into being a healthcare worker in her final years, even enrolling in a course to assist those in end-of-life care. She wanted to be a lamp for others, even as her own light was flickering. She lived in a constant tug-of-war between her desire to heal the world and her inability to heal the wounds that had been inflicted on her before she was even old enough to speak. Throughout her life, Sinéad was a woman in search of a God who wouldn't judge her. Having been deeply wounded by the religious institutions of her youth, she spent decades trying to find a spiritual language that felt safe. She was a woman who lived in a state of spiritual exile, searching for a home that didn't come with a history of silence or shame. But the tragedy of her spiritual journey was that no matter how many names she took or how many paths she walked, the world refused to let her be at peace. Every conversion and every change of heart was met with public scrutiny and online harassment. She was a person trying to heal her soul in a glass house. She once remarked that she felt like a lonely ghost wandering through different faiths, looking for a door that would finally stay open for her. She lived in a constant state of transition, proving that for those who have been deeply hurt in their youth, peace isn't a destination. It's a battle you have to fight every single morning. In 2022, the final and most devastating blow arrived. Her son, Shane, who she described as her soul light, passed away at the age of 17. For a woman who had spent her life trying to protect the child within herself, losing her own child was a grief that surpassed words. Her final messages to the world were drenched in a sorrow that was almost unbearable to read. She spoke of being lost in the woods without him. The tragic reality is that while she passed away 18 months later, many who knew her believe her spirit had truly departed the day she lost Shane. She had survived the laundries, the industry, and the mockery, but the loss of her lamp was the one storm she couldn't weather. Her final days were spent in a quiet, heavy mourning that most of us can only imagine. Sinéad O'Connor's life was a long, difficult walk through the rain. But in that rain, she sang. She gave a voice to the voiceless, even when her own voice was shaking. We often call these lives tragic, and they are. But they are also a testament to human endurance. Sinéad didn't owe us anything, yet she gave us everything: her truth, her pain, and her soul. As we close this chapter on Strange Words music, take a moment to really listen to her today. Listen to the person behind the noise. Thank you for being here and for honoring the legacy of a truly fearless woman. If this story moved you, please consider leaving a comment in honor of Sinead. Take care of yourselves and each other.